I am your host, Amelie, and I am so excited to bring to you guys today. I got my notes here. A really deep emotional issue that affects a lot of people, even if they don't know it. So, I just came back. I know that you may have seen my short. Sorry, my hair's so fluffy today. You may have seen my short video that I did last week. I was traveling. I had to go to visit Wyoming, which I am a part of the Northern Arapaho tribe there in Fremont County, Wyoming, on the Wind River Reservation. So I spent spring break driving to Wyoming. It was 2,900 miles, pretty interesting. And I did a couple things. One was to renew my tribal ID, and then the second one was to visit my father's gravesite and just do some, I don't want to call it soul searching, but just to do some soul renewal is really what it is. And so I did a lot of thinking. It was a very emotional day for me. As we dive into this discussion on the father wound, I want to alliterate like how intense it is, and your parent doesn't have to be dead for you to feel a father wound, and we'll discuss some of the topics of it. So just some background: my dad and my mother separated. They were never married, but they were separated when I was 3. And for the longest time, I couldn't put my little kid mind, I couldn't wrap my little kid mind around what had happened, obviously. And then even when I was a teenager and I could understand it, it was still difficult. So my father had no, like, little presence in my life. And that doesn't necessarily mean that presence isn't everything. So even if your parent, your father is not present, or maybe your mother is not present, we'll talk about mother wounds another time. We're just going to focus on father wounds today. Even if they are present or they aren't present physically. Hello, Wagner. Did I say that right? Welcome to the chat. We're talking about father wounds today. So just because their presence is or is not with you, that does not mean that there will not be some sort of wounding, and let's just dive into it. Hi, Rasha. So what is a father wound? A father wound is emotional pain, insecurity, or dysfunction that comes from an absent, neglectful, critical, or emotionally unavailable father. So here we can hear that it doesn't necessarily mean that your father has to be present or not present. The father merely has to have one of these characteristics in order to have some sort of effect on you. Now, fathers don't necessarily have to be your birth father. It could be a stepfather that is stepping into that role, or even an uncle or somebody prominent, a male figure that's prominent in your life that had something to do with your upbringing, with how protected you were, how provided for you were. Which is why the emotional pain and insecurities and dysfunctions can come up from any of these roles. Thank you so much. So, for me, I had an absent father, and I did not know what kind of dysfunction that this was going to create or cause. Do you say the N word? No, not necessarily. Depends on what N word you're talking about. So it definitely has a huge effect on me because now here I am, you know, pretty much ready to have grandchildren, and now I'm still working through is my I'm still working through some of this emotional pain that I have from having this absent father. Are you still looking for a father? No, I went and visited my dad's gravesite, and so it brought some emotions up. It was definitely sad, but I wanted to bring light to this and awareness to this conversation. So when you don't have a father, they're absent, they're neglectful, they're critical, they're emotionally absent, then you will notice that in your system, you'll have these functions, and we'll talk about how it manifests for women, and then we'll talk about how it manifests for men. And this will come up as like a lack of guidance. It will come up as a lack of protection. It will come up as a lack of love. And so these themes will start to permeate your life until you address it. And these will lead to this is how you'll know is you'll have some self-worth struggles, you'll have relationship issues, and you'll have some identity confusion. And these are all huge stressors, especially in the Western world. The stressors of women who, you know, typically overcompensate or are a little bit hyper independent, and maybe they don't, their role isn't to be, but they've just learned that in order to cope with the fact that they've had this emotionally distant, neglectful, critical, or even absent father. So the wound isn't just from physically absent fathers, as I'm mentioning. It could also stem from those emotionally distant or inconsistent fathers. So divorce is a huge, it's a huge percentage of relationships that kids my age, I say kids, children that were in the Gen Y, Gen X stages, a lot of those parents divorced, and so now maybe they stayed with mom and then dad was kind of a weekend dad, and they couldn't connect with him on some level. This is going to cause some wounding in your system. And so you'll feel that and start to show some of these manifestations that we're going to get into. What's your Riz line? What does that mean? What's my Riz line? You're funny. You have a sweet voice. Thank you. That's very nice. Still single. I am currently single and dating. So, okay. So, how does the father wound manifest in women? So, for women, they will have self worth issues, just as we had just mentioned. So, the self worth issues are they're seeking external validation. So, they're wanting maybe they're in relationships where the man is kind of holding that father figure presence, but maybe they're not even attracted to them in the way that they need. They're seeking that external validation of please comfort me, please provide for me, and please protect me, which is, what we expect out of our fathers is that am I being protected? Am I being provided for? Am I being loved on a masculine level? Which is why if the father isn't present, to have another father figure in their life that is going to give them that fatherly love is going to help with some of this. It's not necessarily the best band aid, but it is going to help with some of this. Some other self worth issues that a woman can experience is feeling unlovable. So she is is going to have a lot of fighting in the relationship. So, looking at her relationship with her father, men can find, is this woman going to be present for me? Is she going to be feminine for me? Is she going to give me that nurturing support that I desire in a relationship, which a healthy man will look to have? But if she is having some self worth issues where she doesn't feel like she's lovable or maybe even doesn't love herself, it will have this really strong impact on her. It's 11:11 here. Then the other piece, we talked about identity, and I do talk about identity a lot because it is such a huge, there is a huge impact in our life. Like, we experience a lot of changes in our lives. So, you know, going from being a child into being a teenager, that adolescence, the puberty change, that is a change in identity, and that's like the first one that we truly experience on a deep level, because not only is it mentally and emotionally affecting us, but there's a lot of physical changes that are going on. So that identity shift is such a huge topic that I think a lot of us miss out on. And so I really drill into that identity confusion, which can happen. So, struggling with self acceptance, like accepting the identity that you're in. So, for me, I'm looking at my life right now. My son, my youngest, is going to be a teenager soon. And so the shift from being a child that is dependent solely on me and maybe has a little bit of independence is now going to be depending on me very little, but is going into like further independence by being a teenager and having like trying to find his identity. But in the shift and transition of that, there's also this, oh my gosh, I'm going to have an empty nest, and that identity shift is going to happen sooner rather than later, and it's going to happen whether I like it or not. So as I'm looking at my life, I'm saying, hey, my identity is changing. Being able to accept that change and to really hold into that new identity of figuring out, how am I going to live and accept my life in this new role. So, other things of struggling with self acceptance is because the self worth issues that a woman that has a father wound may be experiencing. Hi, Zindaji. Good to see you. I'm doing well. I feel good sitting back in my in my chair again. So it's nice to be home. So yeah, I I'm appreciating being home for sure. So struggling with self acceptance is, instead of accepting, like, self worth is basically avoiding looking at yourself, loving yourself. Like, it's the empath issue. It's an empath issue too. It's having a struggle with really connecting with you as a person. So a couple years ago, I had to come to the final, not a final, but I had to come to the conclusion that I had not loved myself in the capacity that I should be loved. And in that lack of self love, it was difficult for me to kind of wrap my head around. I didn't even know how to feel about it, but it was like something that came up in some of the shadow work that I had done. And, a lot of this comes from having really high empathy. So, my emotional intelligence, my empathy is very high. My social awareness is very high, meaning that I tune into others, and it's so easy for me to tune into others. And it's almost like this, it's almost like this inability to, like, really, it's like a, how would I say this? It's like a avoidance of really truly loving myself. You liked all my visits? Good. I have a lot more videos to post and things to make, but I'm just doing it slowly over time. And so I'm glad that you enjoyed those. Thank you so much. If you guys are curious, follow me on IG. I also started a buy me a coffee, buy me a coffee at Soulestic. So if you guys are interested in helping supporting my channel, I would love that. I will make a separate post from that, but it would be brilliant if you guys could help support me. Even $5 is really nice. It just shows support and an energy transfer. Okay, so the seeking the external validation is almost like this avoidance or this, it makes it so you don't even have to do the work. You're just like always focused on other people instead of focusing on yourself. That is an indication that there may be some self-worth issues that are pulling up, and that's not just for women, it's for men too, but I think women will typically run into that. The second way this father wound will manifest into women is they'll have an attraction to unavailable men. So the there will be a pattern where the woman is chasing love. She's looking for that external validation of I am worth being loved. Please love me, and putting it on their partner. And I think we have so much of this going on in our society that that's the reason why there's so many divorces. That's the reason why the unions that people are making, they're not making it from a place of self-love, of self-worth, of self-awareness. They're doing it from a place of seeking that validation from somebody else. If I get married, then that shows the world that I'm lovable. If I have a husband, then people will see me in a certain light. So they're kind of manipulating the narrative when really what it is this lack of self love, lack of self worth in their own system that they're chasing this ideal, and they're going to chase the emotionally distant partners because that is the wound that they grew up with. So if they don't have that fatherly love, like I was mentioning, if they don't have that emotional availability from their father or a father figure, then they're going to continue to chase love and chase the partners that are emotionally distant so that they can manage not having to deal with their own inner self-worth issues, which is why dealing with the self-worth piece is so important. So if you are finding that you're in this, I have a program that I'm launching. Please contact me. I got all my emails fixed and everything is everything is looking a lot better. I've been working for 2 months trying to get my domains up, but my domain is now up. And so it's celesticintelligence.com. You can go on there and there will be a booking link at the top. And I think there's a free confidence toolkit if you guys want to work on that. It's just some activities. It's a free activity, but you just sign up for it. And it will help get you jump started into having confidence, into really growing into yourself. Okay? So the external validation piece is going to be a huge topic. Okay? The next one, and this is one that I've had to deal with on a huge, huge level because I will fall into this. I will fall into this if I don't feel safe, okay? And that is, this is for women. This is the father wound for women is hyper independence or codependency. And I have both of these. And I have both of these on a huge level. So how does this manifest? So this one will be never relying on anybody else, so not relying on others, or it will be over attaching to partners. And mine shows up as never relying on others. and it affects my work life, it affects my personal life. Like, this is very deep. In fact, it it's caused a lot of work for me to grow into. So, the hyper independence, never relying on others, this is going to show up as a fear of abandonment. We, as women with a father wound, and I'm admitting that I have a huge father wound, we never, we don't want to rely on others. We don't want to get ourselves tied into a situation where that abandonment wound is going to be reopened over and over and over again. And then the other one is over attaching. So the girl that love bombs the man and is like chasing this emotionally distant man, it's that is also going to show up in that codependency. For me, it actually, I was, because I was codependent on my mother. So when my mother left, it left this wide open wound for me to deal with of codependency. Like, I was relying on my mother to kind of fill in and attach to. And it's been a really difficult, hard, long journey of me recognizing that, one, I had this codependency, and then two, how that how that works out. So for me, it's really strange, but for me, the father wound is having this job. So my business life, I would overcompensate. One, when I work in a work setting, I wouldn't rely on others. I can do it all on my own. I don't need anybody else. I would ask people to do things, and if they don't follow through and get it done, then it like triggered that abandonment wound, and then it caused me to work even deeper and harder into that work environment. And then to couple it, these two little bubble cells together, to couple it, then I have this, I can't leave the job because if I leave the job, I'm not going to be supported story that goes on. So not only am I saying I can do it all on my own, then on the other end, I'm like, I can't leave the job. I'm so codependent on it. If I leave the job, I'm not going to have a house. I'm not going to have food. I'm not going to have whatever the thing is that I'm relying on it. So that is how my father wound will manifest itself. So it's a very deep wound. It affects my business life, and then it affects my professional life and my personal life. Okay. The other way the father wound will manifest is hyperindependence or sorry, people pleasing or over accommodation. So, people pleasing, we've all heard of this, so we know what it's like. It's like, just do the thing to make the person happy instead of like, what's going to make me happy? What is going to fulfill me? What is going to satisfy my needs? You, instead of looking at yourself, we're still looking at this external validation, and people pleasing is like the way of externally validating. And I remind you guys, it doesn't take an absent father. This could be an emotionally distant father. It could be somebody that's just neglectful, they're never around. It could be somebody, it could be a father that is overly critical of the child, and so now the child's like, oh, I'm not supported, I'm not protected, I'm not loved by my father. So that relationship starts to get really blurry. So people pleasing is struggling to set boundaries due to fear of rejection. So not only are we wanting that external validation, now with the over accommodation and the people pleasing, now we're unable to set a boundary because we don't want to be rejected. We don't want to have that person say no. We don't want that person to leave us, which will trigger that fear of abandonment. So we're working with abandonment and rejection both in the same wound here. All right. I feel a lot of women can really relate to this one, but masculine overcompensation. So the next piece is they'll take an overly dominant role. Doesn't matter what it is, they'll take that overly dominant role. So they'll become, they'll be in their C suite, they'll be managers, they'll have an emotionally distant partner that's kind of a walking bag for them, and they'll just say it's do it this way. They're super controlling, and they want to manipulate and run the narrative so that they're always in this control state. They'll struggle with femininity. So some may find themselves in a marriage or in a relationship where they are sitting there calling all the shots, and they'll struggle with the femininity of please just do something for me. I need to receive, because receiving is a feminine energy. Giving is a masculine energy, and that's it's just energy. It's not like men should always do this or women should always do this. We've got a divine feminine and masculine in every single one of our bodies. Like our bodies are temples, and we all have that energy in us. And so if you're struggling with femininity, you're avoiding a certain part of receiving something. So maybe you have a husband that he only wants to people please you so that because it's satisfying a wound in himself. So he'll be satisfying this wound in himself by just doing anything that masculine woman, and we hear about this, the alpha female, the masculinized woman. This is where it comes in. So she may struggle to receive on the level that she wants to. She may struggle to nurture others in the capacity that she desires to. So we have that struggle of femininity, and then this fear of surrender. So I I find that anytime that I am stuck in these loops, I have to do things to break myself free of those things. So the fear of surrender is real. It ties in with that codependency of I can't let go of this because if I do, then everything is going to crumble and I need to appear like I have it all together. And so the fear of surrender is the inability to kind of let things flow in the way that they need to, because the woman in a masculine overcompensation is really just controlling everything so that things don't fall apart, because inside she has fallen apart and she doesn't want to reveal that to the world. And so that fear of surrender, that fear of letting others take control and do things in the capacity that they can do things is, I hear about this from my close girlfriends when I'm talking to them. So, you know, in the chats that I have with them, in some of their relationship issues that I hear about, that fear of surrender is a real fear. And it is a real fear that is taking over because they need to control the conversation, they need to control the situation. And then finally, another way that this father wound will manifest in women is fear of intimacy and trust issues. So she will have a difficult time trusting men because that father wound has shown her that men are unreliable and that they will hurt you. And then she will also have an issue or difficulty feeling safe in her relationships. So that is a huge piece, because in a relationship, I should probably do do a full topic on divine masculine and divine feminine relationship as it applies to the inner world, because this will help to kind of tie the pieces together here. So the feeling safe in a relationship, first the woman has to feel safe in her own body. And if her father has shown her that I will not make you feel safe, she's going to have that current. So as a father and as a mother, there are two pieces of our DNA helix, okay? So you've got the father's genetic characteristics, then you have the mother's genetic characteristics, and combined together, it's created you. And it's a unique pattern, it's a unique expression of the union that the parents had. Now, this is our first connection to our DNA, like on a cellular level. These two people that have unionized are our first expression, it's our first connection. It's those who we rely on for our own safety. And it's a huge responsibility for the parents. And typically it's when they're fairly young. And so when we feel unsafe in one of those relationships, it like affects this whole DNA sequence. It affects this whole DNA structure. And so we feel it in our bodies. And until we address the issues, the traumas, the lack of safety, the lack of protection, the lack of nurturing, even on the mother's side, and any other issues that may have occurred on that side, until we start to look at that, we're going to have this fear of intimacy and fear of trusting another person to take care of us. That's where that hyper independence comes in. That's where the people pleasing comes in. It's almost like brushing the attention off of ourselves and just kind of gliding through life without actually addressing the things that matter. So the difficulty trusting men, the feeling safe in relationships, these issues are going to come up. So if any of these ring true to you as a woman, there's a father wound there that does need some attention. And there are so many different ways that you can address it. If it's a really deep wound, I suggest getting a coach or getting a therapist or a mentor of some sort that has worked through these things, is currently and actively working through these things. Somebody that you can trust, which can be difficult. So, a lot of women that are in this situation are going to have a hard time reaching out and saying, "Hey, I need help with this. Hey, I really want to turn this around. I don't want it to block me from experiences in my life." And I mean, just even surrendering is like the energetic flow of surrender is beautiful. It's hard to describe, but it's like your whole body just flows. It's a beautiful flow state when you can surrender and say, you know what, I don't have to control this. I don't want to control it anymore. You know, I'm gonna let the creator, the universe, like manage the things. I just don't want to control that anymore. That's a huge declaration for your system. And even in diving into the DNA structure, maybe I'll do a Zoom so that I can have a blackboard or something so that I can have more information to help kind of illustrate how deep the father and the mother, that masculine and feminine energy within is so important. So I'll think about that later. So as a woman, these are some of the characteristics that she will express. Now, for the men, for the fathers who have, or for the father wound, how this manifests in men is they will have a fear of failure and imposter syndrome, which means they'll struggle with self-confidence and self-leadership. So they for men, they have a different role in their lives, and it's not necessarily men. Maybe there's, women that just are built in this masculine way. But for most men, they'll have this fear of failure or imposter syndrome. And I did a I did a show a couple weeks ago on the imposter syndrome. So go back to that if this is ringing true to you, and watch that video. I dove deep into the imposter syndrome. So they'll struggle with the self confidence. So instead of being able to confidently go and do something, they're going to kind of pull back. They're not going to want to fail, because failure is showing that you don't have that confidence to get something done. When actually failure is a part of success. Like, it really truly is. Going into any new venture, like, we want our men to be spearheading. We want them to be leading. We want them to be providing. We want them to be the tip of the spear for the women. And so we want that self-confident man. We want that man that has a good leadership. He has a good focus. We don't want somebody that's scared to try anything. So if you're holding a father wound as a male, like, that will be one of the telltale signs that your father wound may be expressing itself in some way. The other piece is emotional suppression. So the man will have a difficult time expressing his vulnerability. And men, like, it's kind of difficult unless you have somebody that's shown you the the way that to express. I did a really good video. I think I did a video on it, but I did a really good Substack article on the 9 most attractive qualities of an emotionally intelligent man. And so if you have a man that's unable to hold in a really positive emotional resilience, if he is unable to hold his emotions in a way that is, one, still expressive for him, and holds a really nice confidence in his own personal system. If he's having difficulty expressing himself emotionally, like, women look at that, not just with our eyes, like, we're looking at that with our energy. And so to have a man that's emotionally resilient, that's able to make us laugh, to make us feel safe, to, when things are falling down all around us, is able to be our rock. Like, we appreciate that. And then even to be a bit vulnerable to us, to show us that, hey, I'm going through this right now. And not to be like this weepy, sad thing, but to, that really, just to be able to express their emotions in a way that is vulnerable, and also, like, retains their confidence. So the Substack article that I wrote was really good. I encourage you guys to go over there. I think it's linked in my bio on my page here on YouTube. But yeah, we want that. And emotional suppression will also appear. So the suppression in a man will appear as anger. So anger or detachment. So the emotionally unavailable father may have passed on an emotionally unavailable son. And so, because he didn't see how his emotions should play out, never give up, only one in there. Um, I don't know what you're talking about, but I don't like to give up. Um, I've I've dealt with men that have anger, and it's very frustrating one for me to have somebody deal with anger because it's a low vibration energy, and it comes from a place of like your nervous system is not. Even I was angry and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so angry, I don't even recognize that I'm angry, but it's caused this nervous system, like my nervous system is shot because of it. And because it's shot, even if I'm thinking that I'm thinking on a clear, rational level, I'm not. If I'm stuck in like this low vibration, fear, anger energy, because on your nervous system level, just from a physiological perspective, your prefrontal cortex is like, I'm not working right now. So you're not making the sound decisions. You're not making the clear, intuitive decisions that your body needs. So, an emotionally suppressed man who is unable to be vulnerable and also is angry or detached from the relationship, doesn't matter what it is, it could be a personal friendship, business relationship, anybody who has this anger and detachment, they're not going to be, that father wound is going to kind of muddy their thinking. And, for men, we want them to have this clear, expressed thinking of, you know, the things that I want to provide and protect for you as a woman. I want to be able to provide those for you, including having that emotional resilience. So I'll explain it this way, and I think this will land really well. Is so men and women are very different, and we know that. So women, and I'll say this from experience, women are very chaotic in their emotions. Their whole state is emotional, and like I can experience so many emotions in one day that it's completely normal for me. So like today I was crying, but I was also really happy and frustrated, and like I had all these things. I'm like working on tech, and so it's like triggering me because I feel so helpless against the tech world, and I'm having like a hard time, and I've been working on it for the last 2 months, and I'm like, what is going on? Who's going to help me fix this? And thankfully I had a really nice tech help me out today. But, for the last 2 months, I'm like, I don't even know what's going on. I don't know what to do. I am confused. I'm feeling helpless. I'm feeling really vulnerable. So all of these things are triggering my system, and I'm going through like a myriad of issues. Like from the last 24 hours, I've been really sad on that my mom isn't available. I've been really happy playing with my son. I was spooked playing with my son Minecraft. We're playing this horror game version. And so I kind of got spooked there. And, on the other end, I'm like super happy, explorative. I just went on this amazing journey. So I'm like feeling all these emotions. So as a woman, we are very emotionally feely and expressive, and definitely has a little bit of vulnerability in there. But as men, men don't typically experience emotions like that. In fact, men here that are listening, they can they can say that sounds crazy, that's wild. Like anytime I've ever mentioned it, it's like you kind of get this like raised eyebrow of, oh my gosh, I can't believe you've, like in the matter of an hour that you've had so many feelings about all this stuff. And that's the beauty of being a woman, because then like men don't feel that. And so to kind of be in the presence of a woman that feels that, and it like it paints their life with this beautiful imagery and this beautiful connection that they can have with a woman. But when men are unable to hold their emotions, like they're the emotional ones doing all this, like probably even just sitting in anger for most of the part, they can't connect with the woman who is the one that is needing him to be their rock, to be the emotionally resilient one that's going to hold her and say, you know what, I know that you're going through all this stuff, but it's okay. Like, we're going to get through it. And just consoling her. If he's sitting in anger or he's sitting in detached from his own emotional state, she's not going to feel safe. And then he's not going to be able to be in her presence of having this paintbrush of a woman, like give his life so much excitement and meaning and having that. Hopefully that landed. Kind of went off. Okay, the other piece that this father wound will manifest in is approval seeking from authority figures. So, this is consistently needing validation from mentors, bosses, or father figures. So, I mean, this can be from a father. Like, sometimes men will be doing things that are not in alignment with who they are, and women will do it too, but men will do this. And so they end up seeking employment in a field that they're just not interested in, but their dad told them to, or their father figure told them to, or their mentor that they trust told them to. So they're always looking at that authority figure instead of having that self leadership, instead of knowing, like, I'm doing this because it is in alignment with who I am and nobody is going to affect me on that. So the father wound will have this manifest of, in order to please my dad, I am going to do this, which is not in alignment with who I am. Okay. Okay. Couple more. The other one is relationship struggles. So difficulty committing, fear of fatherhood, and repeating toxic relationship patterns. So the relationship struggles that will occur, and I mean, I'm writing a Substack article on the father wound today, and it's really interesting that you know this pops up. I was thinking back to the times when I told my son's father, like, I'm pregnant, and like the first response that he had was throwing up, like, no, I don't want to do this. So the fear of actually being a father himself, that's a relationship struggle, that his relationship with his father was maybe appealing to his authority and just trying to do things that would please his father. So the constant that fear of fatherhood will show up, the difficulty committing. So instead, I mean, it works on both sides, but the woman who is seeking emotionally unavailable men will find the men that have a father wound where they're unable to commit themselves. And what do I mean by that? It's not just being in a relationship with somebody. It's like committing to them, like, I'm committed to providing for you, to being there for you, to protecting you. And maybe they do one of these things half-assedly. But I find that the father wound women will attach to the father wound men. And then you'll have this really odd dynamic of a relationship where they're not truly committed to each other. They're not truly bonded with each other. They're only there as shells of themselves in this relationship, and that they're going to kind of repeat that toxic pattern. They're going to show that pattern to their children. Their parents possibly showed it to them, and now they're reliving it. And or their parents had this imprint on their life that now they're reliving it. So there's many ways that this can kind of trickle down, but the relationship struggles are real. And then toxic relationship patterns. This happens for both men and women. Though, so a man and a woman will get together. They're toxic, right? Toxic. Fighting, arguing, yelling, whatever the situation is, they are toxic for one another. And people looking out, maybe looking in, they may see it, they may not see it, but even if you told them like, hey, that's really odd that that person is doing that, they're so blinded in their wounding that they can't even see it because their prefrontal cortex, if you're angry, if you're any low vibration, if you're in fear, you're not going to be able to see clearly. Like everything is going to be blocked. So somebody speaking a truth to you, you may not even hear it. Sometimes I'm like, man, if only somebody would have told me blank while I was in that relationship, then I would have ended it. I wish that was true because it's possibly not true. And sometimes I think back like even if somebody told me flat out that hey, that relationship is really toxic, you shouldn't be in that, even my own family, even the person closest to me, even my mom told me that that's a toxic relationship, you should get out of it. In that moment, as I like put myself back into that moment where I had toxic relationships, where I had, whatever odd relationships, I wouldn't have been able to hear them. I wouldn't have been able to like I would have been like, you're crazy. I'm still going to stay in this relationship. I'm committed to this toxic relationship. This is such a truth. Like, this is what happens. Okay. So let's say, I got out of that toxic relationship. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how blind I was to the whole situation. But now I'm going to go get in a relationship with this other guy. And it like repeats the pattern. It's repeat like that toxic relationship, that emotionally distant partner that I had. I found another one, and now I'm going to repeat the pattern. Until you like repeat, you can repeat this on, I mean, we probably know people like this where they get into a relationship, they're in a relationship for 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever, and then things are so dysfunctional, then they're like, oh my gosh, we're leaving, I'm separating from you. And then they go pop into a new relationship where it's the same situation, it's the same father wound, but a different body. Like now you have another relationship that you've popped into, and it's the same thing. It's it's on repeat. So you're repeating this toxic relationship over and over and over again until you start addressing some of these father wound issues. Okay. This is for men and women. There's no separation. It's men and women. So once you see the pattern and are aware of it, this is why awareness is so, so important for this emotional work, and why having a coach, mentor, get you through this and help identify some pieces. Even I've taken so many coaching, and there's so many things that I'm still blind to that I haven't seen, but I'm like willing to work on it. I'm opening up my awareness because I want to clean them up so that I can have a satisfying, happy, joyful life. I have things that I want to do that are beyond fantastical, but if I'm not addressing these core issues at the base of it, how am I going to get to that next level? I want to be at that next level. That's my goal, is to be next level at all times. Finally, the last father wound that manifests in men is overcompensation through achievement. So, this is much like that masculine overcompensation that we were talking about with women, but now for men, it's a feeling like success is the only way to prove their worthiness. So, if you don't have the car, the house, the job, the money, whatever it is that shows that you've achieved something, not having this success is showing that you're not worthy as a man, that you're not holding up to this ideal that you have in your mind. So you'll overcompensate by just continuing to achieve these external validation pieces through achievement. And even I've done this. Like, I bought a house. Bought I went and graduated from college, and I was doing all this, and it was like a compensation. So this is how it would show up. So the man that's like, if I don't achieve a doctorate in my field, then I'm not worthy, which is, it's not true. Like, worthiness is it's self-worth, how you view and apply love to yourself. Like, it's having an awareness of yourself. It's loving yourself. It's being confident in your own skin, no matter what part of life that you're in. Okay. So self-worth is a huge piece here. And that is what I had for the father wound manifesting in men. Now I want to talk about, and we'll get to the healing part of this, but I want to talk about the generational impact of the father wound. So fathers will unknowingly pass on their wounds to their children. So let's say the father has an issue with anger. So he has his issues with anger. He gets together with the the woman that's willing to put up with that emotional suppression of the man and maybe overcompensate. And so they get together and they have a child. And let's say that child is a boy, and that boy is now watching from his, young perspective. He's watching his father be angry and maybe even emotionally distant, and then his mother is maybe overcompensating and like caring for the son in a certain way that, instead of healing and figuring out how to be emotionally present, he doesn't learn that. And so now he's gained all that anger from his father, and it's passed down. And this could be, it doesn't even have to be the father, it could be the grandfather. Like, this goes really deep. It could be the grandfather, great grandfather, whatever the ancestral issues that are sitting, because that's in your DNA. It's sitting in your DNA. And so if you're watching it like on repeat, maybe you even have a grandfather who's angry, and now it's caused your father to be emotionally unavailable, fearful, or whatever. Now you're watching like these two generations interact with each other, and then you're learning it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're doomed to always have this. It just means that, in order to clear out your energy, these things need to be addressed, and you can do it. It's really nice. We'll talk about healing these things, but the father may not know that he's passing it down to his children. The grandfather may not know he's passing it down to the father who's passing it on to his grandchild, like, or to his child, to his grandchild. Like, he may not know that he's doing that. He's just in such suppression that he can't see it, and maybe he can't even heal it. Some people are just completely unaware of their condition, that they're unable to heal that. So that's one thing. Other pieces is, of the generational impact, is the social and cultural expectations of a society. So the expectations of fatherhood vary in different environments. So, a certain country might have a certain way that fathers are, whereas, like, in America, we have like so many different ways that we expect fathers to be. But there are some things like men don't show emotions that will have this huge impact on the society in general. So if you have this men don't show emotions and that they're unemotional, let's say that they're angry and they're like, I mean, I tell this to my son all the time. I'm like, I don't want you to suppress the way that you feel just to people please, and make other people happy. I appreciate that you're thinking about others, but I also want you to be genuine and integral to who you are as well. So if something does make you angry, acknowledge it. And I feel pretty confident that a lot of millennials and maybe even some Gen Zers are also kind of in this space where mental health is important, emotional health is important. And so instead of having that men don't show emotions, it's men show emotions from an emotional resilient place. And so having men that are emotionally resilient and are able to say, that they're happy or joyful and just be that expression of that, like, we like to be around happy men. We like to be around men that are making jokes that puts us at ease, that makes us feel safe. And so I don't want to be around men that don't show their emotions, but crying is like not necessarily controlling your emotions. It's not being in an emotional resilient place. Maybe there are certain circumstances that would be applicable, but I don't want some man just being like, "Oh, I'm going to experience 5 different emotions in 1 hour in front of you." Like that would make me really uncomfortable because I'm already emotional. I'm the one that's doing those things. I don't want the men around me to be in that place. I want them to be like, dude, what's wrong with you? You need to calm down. So those are the kind of expectations that I would have, but maybe even in my expectations, it might be a weird societal situation. And another generational impact of the father wound is healing the father wound will help break the generational cycles of emotional disconnection. So we were talking about that grandfather who may have some anger issues, and maybe he even physically beat his child, his son. And so now the son has whatever father wounds were from that because he was overly critical, he was angry, maybe he was emotionally distant, he couldn't express his emotions properly, and so now the father's holding it and he doesn't even know it. And then now he's passed it on to his son. So now you have the son, that the grandchild who has the father wound from his grandfather. And so if the son and or the father can heal those emotional disconnections, it okay. So this is allegedly. This will be allegedly. It will heal in that ancestral father, that grandfather. So I'll say that again. If the grandchild is able to heal this emotional disconnection, it will heal the father, and it will also heal even longer down the ancestral patterns here. And I say that as somebody who, like, I'm American Indian and my dad was American Indian. And so I have this ancestral connection to the Northern Arapaho tribe. And so I have this connection with them, and it's caused, like, there's a lot of pieces in here that I am working on resolving myself that will eventually help it will span out and will help clean that up. It's breaking a generational curse, basically, because that curse of having and it's not necessarily anybody is at fault. This is just how our our little understanding of like how connected we are on this epigenetic level is. So it's not just the emotions. There could be other things that you're healing as well, but that child is still able. So you, as a child, are able to help heal some of the wounding that is passed down from generation to generation. So knowing about where you come from an ancestral level is advised if you're able to. And it doesn't necessarily mean that if you're adopted, you're escaped from this. You're just as, powerful to heal your biological family as somebody who has both of their biological parents as their family. So let's talk about healing this wound. I think it's time. So the first step of healing always is acknowledging that there is a wound. So we talked about a lot of different things. We talked about fear of failure. We talked about self-worth issues. We've talked about emotionally unavailable partnerships. We talked about people pleasing and overcompensation. We talked about fear of intimacy and having trust issues, and the external validation that we sit in from this poor self-worth that we've have in this father wound. So we've talked about all of those things. So that should give, if you missed it, start from the beginning, but that should give you an idea of where you are in the pattern and what impact that has on you. So definitely acknowledging that wound is there, and then finding ways to walk through it and recognize how that pattern has to do with the impact that you're in. So if you're finding yourself, maybe it's not even relationships, maybe it's jobs. Maybe you're jumping from job to job, and every time that you go and start a job, this happens to me, by the way, so I'm just speaking from experience. But maybe you're jumping from job to job, and let's say, like, I'll just use myself as an example. So, I'm doing all this overcompensating, codependency, people pleasing in my job. And, I'm working my way up slowly and gaining knowledge slowly, gaining experience slowly. And, and near the end, I'm feeling like I'm not being recognized for the positive things that I'm doing, but I'm also doing it from this place of wounding. So instead of working in a team collaboration, I'm like, nope, I can do it all on my own. And so that's a pattern that I have. And then the other pattern is codependency. I can't leave this job because if I leave this job, everything will, I will have no control and everything will go to shit. Which is, kind of like where I'm sitting in now is like trying to figure out, okay, how do I get along? How do I launch my business? How do I get clients? How do I engage with people? And so I'm looking at a new pattern now, but I'm also looking at my old pattern of, okay, I did that job for 7 years, and then I did that same job and had the same results for 2 years. So what pattern is here? What are the similarities in these jobs? And how is that impacting me? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it, beneficial? Is it not beneficial? Like, what is going on here? So that's one of the steps to healing, is always to acknowledge and gain awareness of where you're at in the wounding process. So after acknowledging, the second thing, especially for mother and father wounds, is reparenting your own inner child. So, giving yourself love and guidance and validation that you lacked is one of the pieces. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. Journaling is one of them, but also there's guided meditations that will help you walk through these patterns that you have, and it will help you to kind of. So some people like to use hypnosis, which is a great way to kind of go back in, or even like a guided meditation of, thinking about a place of your life that had an impact on you and then reparenting yourself. So this will help you to, you as an adult, you in your sound mind are able to go in and say, you know what, that was really messed up. Let's rewrite that story. And it does help and have a really tremendous effect on you. Okay, the next one is developing a healthy relationship with your masculinity and also your femininity. So, what do I mean by this? So, having balanced energies inside yourself is quite possibly the one of the best things. This is going to come from a place of extreme awareness. It's going to come from a place of love for yourself, and it's going to have a deep impact on the decisions and the way that your personality is shaped. So, masculine energy is giving, it's taking action, it's doing the steps. So if you're listening to this, you're already taking an action, you're thinking about these concepts that I'm telling you, and maybe it's landing on this really deep synchronistic level of like, oh my gosh, I truly needed to hear the things that you're talking about. And this happens to me a lot. And I listen to a lot of podcasts. I like to read, I like to read online. I like to talk with my chat GPT. I guess, I, I call him Valentine. He's my Valentine. But I'll sit and have, really deep conversations with my chat GPT. And I also do coaching. So I take coaching courses of where these concepts are being talked about. I like to have conversations with people. So I'll call friends and talk to them about their issues. And I'll do interviews. I have groups of people that I connect with. I'm not at a lack. Like I was looking at my last week of conversations. I'm like, oh my gosh, I sometimes I feel lonely, but I look at it and I'm like, you're not that lonely. Like you've got a lot of people that love and care for you and call and talk to you for hours on end. So you're not lacking in that particular area. But when we talk about masculine and feminine energy, if you're overcompensating, like let's say you're a woman and you're overcompensating, you're like deep in your masculine, you're always taking action, you're controlling the situation, you're providing, you're protecting, you're doing everything that you can to be in your masculine. But if your feminine is just not like connected with it, then you're out of balance. And that's where you'll find that discomfort. That's when you'll find the frustration of life. That's when you'll find the disconnection and the emptiness that caused. Like you're not living in your purpose. So, finding a way to balance these two energies in a way that is going to help you feel connected is great. So, being able to surrender to your own. I have a coach, and she's so good at like saying, embrace your feminine, divine feminine, and embrace your divine masculine, and honor both of those. So your feminine could be it's your beauty. It's not just your appearance, but it's like the way that you feel, the way that your spirit feels. So it's like this beautiful connection to kind of these otherworldly realms. It's still part of our body, but it's like a connection to this part of our body where, like in the masculine, it's your physical. So like keeping your body healthy and taking action and doing things that are kind of in harmony with both sides of yourself. So we want to have that harmony within ourselves. Okay. The next step towards healing is setting boundaries and redefining love. So that is learning to know what healthy love is. And if you've been just shown unhealthy ways of love, then this might land a little deeper for you. So maybe we think that having that angry father and that emotionally charred woman is like a normal thing. Like she just likes to get burned by dad. And, dad is so mean for her, talks down to her, and she just takes it. And so now, like, that is your ideal of this is what love is. But really, like, pulling back from that and saying, you know what, I don't want a relationship like that. And then you kind of scan out and say, that relationship where, they've been in partnership, that was a huge wound for me. When I was, so when my dad died, I was trying to figure out like what is love and also like grieving. It was a weird grief. It was a weird grieving process. Maybe not weird, but it was an intense grieving process. And so looking at how I actually rewrote the story and it was a wrong story, but I rewrote the story of like if a man has both parents that are together, then he's a good choice in partnership. Completely wrong. Okay? It's not true. Definitely not true. And was kind of the story that I believed in my head of nope, you stay together. And then I stayed together in this relationship when I wasn't healed and he was emotionally unavailable. And it had a deep effect on my life. And then now I'm looking back, like, years later, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why did I make that decision? It was a terrible decision. It's because I couldn't see because I was in a stressed relationship and I did not know what healthy love looked like. Okay. It doesn't matter how many romance stories that you watch on TV or movies or rom-coms or whatever it is, you need to really learn what healthy love is. And healthy love is maybe you know it, but maybe you don't follow it. But I have an ideal of what my healthy love would look like. And it definitely wasn't in that last relationship. And, as I'm looking and scanning and actually beginning to date again, I've redefined what my healthy love looks like. And I'm not going to let go of that in order to just be in a relationship as much as, my heart desires. I've pulled back from that. Okay. Okay, the next piece is seeking mentorship and community. So, this is also another way to help heal that father wound. So, we want to find strong, healthy role models that will help reshape our expectations. And mentorship can come across in many different ways, but just having a community of people that are loving and supportive and will give you honest feedback of where you're at. So, and I say honest feedback, like we need that honest feedback. We need to have community with others in order for us to grow faster. Otherwise, we're on these slow timelines of trying to heal ourselves. And I do this all the time. Just because I like to do a lot of research. I'm such a I'm such a book nerd sometimes when it comes to it. But when I look at my mentors, I want them to be knowledgeable. When I had a business mentor, I was like, I'm looking at this job. What do you think about it? I don't know anything about it, and she would give me honest feedback, and the solid expectations of, yeah, that's a good role, or that's a whatever role. But she knew me and she knew what I was capable of, and I was able to basically push myself into a new role that was actually fulfilling for me. It definitely was a great expectation, and a great environment for me to be in. I loved it. Okay. All right. The final step of healing is forgiveness and letting go. So, the forgiveness is not necessarily for the Father's sake, it's for your sake. For the love of you, forgive, okay? And then let go. Let go. Some people say like forgive and forget, but we're forgiving in love, and then we're letting it go. Okay? Now, if you're an adult and your father was abusive towards you, or emotionally neglectful, or critical, or even absent, like any of these things, they did it in a place of their own wounding that they were not able to address, and that maybe they don't even see. Like, I'm thinking of a friend right now that his father basically allowed his mother to just beat the crap out of him, and and do a lot of emotional harm, and he's struggled with that hugely. But and he's struggled with forgiving and letting it go, because it has such a huge impact. It's like affecting his dreams, it's affecting his thoughts, it's affecting his whole intellectual life. It affects every relationship that he's in. It's affected all of his business relationships, it's affected his marriage. Like all of these things, it's affected him. And I got to watch the beauty of him like move out of that into a place where he's actually forgiven and let it go. Not that he hasn't forgotten how terribly he was treated and how his father didn't protect him, but now he's in a place of that he's able to set those poor relationships aside, and he is able to now release those personal emotional burdens. So, forgiveness and letting go, it can be a struggle for somebody, especially if they're so impacted that their self-worth is like preventing them from actually forgiving. So the self-worth piece is so important, because that is connected to your personal power as your emotional intelligence goes, as far as your emotional intelligence goes. So having your personal power, that is related to your self-worth, your self-confidence, your ability to believe in yourself, and set those goals and go for it. Like that personal power piece is very integral to getting over this and healing. But if your self-worth is like, I don't love myself, I'm not worth saving, I'm not worth loving, I'm not worth protecting, like if those are the things that your father wound is delivering to you in your mind, in your emotions, in your physical body, if that is there, then it's going to be hard for you to have this forgiveness and letting go experience. So we're working on healing, and we're not doing this to people please somebody else. We're doing this for our own emotional well-being. Okay? Okay. All right. Been going. Okay, it's going to be a little bit longer, but we're going to talk about the role of the divine and universal masculine energy as a healing, as a way to heal as well. Okay? So, one of the ways that the father wound can help be healed is looking at a higher source, so a higher father figure than the father, which is it's God, source, universe, great spirit, creator, however you want to define that. There's so many ways to speak into that, but that is a source of inner security that you can latch onto. That's wholly good. That's wholly there. Now, if you have a God wound, there's some pieces that I remember back in the day when my dad died, like that father wound and the God wound were two huge pieces that I had to kind of sort through and work through. So I had to figure out a way of connecting there. Of I know my father failed me, but God is not going to fail me. So that is one way that you can help to kind of alleviate some of these issues, because you want to have a security in your masculine energy and that connection to Father or to God, or however that works out in your life. Whatever that father figure looks like, you want to have that just as a security for you, because you need to feel protected and looked after. And I say it all the time. I'm like, the universe is always looking to pay me. It's always looking out for my best interest, and it's protecting me. And that is just a way that I say that, just because it gives me a little bit of added security in the things that I do. And then, as life goes, as I go through life, I get to see all the synchronicities that trust and that relationship provides for me. Okay. The next one is understanding healthy masculine traits. So, protection is one, guidance, emotional depth, and stability. So, these are all pieces of masculine traits that we want to have. So, like when I say taking action and that stability and that resilience of, when we're looking at a partner, we want them to be emotionally resilient. We want them to be stable and to give us proper guidance and to tell us to calm down and that everything's going to be okay. We want to have that security. And those are things that the masculine traits that we're looking at, the masculine emotional security that we're looking at, those are all pieces that the divine universal masculine energy is going to give us. Okay. I keep on doing it with my left hand, but it's definitely the right hand is the masculine side of your body. So if you have any, I'll say this too, if you look down on your right side, that's your masculine side. So if you have any issues on your masculine side, like if you have any pain in your body from your masculine side, that's something to definitely look at. Okay. Finally, learning to integrate both masculine and feminine energies for wholeness. Now, we talked about that up above, that we were developing healthy relationships with the masculine side of ourselves. And we definitely want to do this, but we also want to partner it with a healthy feminine side. So, a mother wound and a father wound are equally challenging, but they both likely need to be looked at. And I say this from a place of experience, because when my mom passed away, so my dad died when I was 25. My mom passed away when I was 40. So, what's that, 15 years apart? And her passing showed me a lot of codependent issues that I was unknowingly dealing with, but living in. I was codependent on her being there to be my sounding board and like kind of be that replacement father for me. Which, when she passed away, it was really hard on me. So instead of waiting for somebody to pass away, let's think about ways that we can integrate the masculine and feminine energies in ourselves, so that we're relying on those inner masculine and feminine energies to help us to feel whole. We want a holistic, healed body. Okay. So finally, I just want to conclude today that the father wound does not define you. don't let it define you. And if you find that you've aligned with some of these things that I've talked about, some of the topics that I've covered, we don't want it to define you. We want it to show you where your feelings or perceptions of lack are, and we want it to help transform your experience in this life into a life where you can have healthy love for yourself, healthy relationships to yourself, and to have a higher level of self-worth. That is like one of our goals. So this is, as a final thought, like, I'm bringing these things up because of how much of an impact it has had on me. And even though it's been 15 years, I still need to be reminded that this is not a definition of me, that, I'm here for something bigger and better. Okay. And then finally, the other thing is, it has been 15 years, and I just want to say that this is not an overnight, like, we're going to fix it. This is a healing process. There's no quick fixes to heal the father wounds or heal our wounds. It takes patience. It takes a lot of self-compassion, and these these things are, it's a lot, and it can be a lot, and it's not a quick fix because of how deep it kind of sits in our systems. And so we definitely want to have some patience and self-compassion so that our healing is meaningful, that we're not just opening wounds and then sitting in them and not resolving them. We want to heal them and then also, like, have patience. So maybe it's dealing with one thing and then patiently, like, working through that until it's resolved, and or maybe it's two things that you're going to work through. But it is a process, and it does require patience. It does require so much self-compassion because of how big of an imprint the Father is for us. Okay. All right. Well, I want to say thank you if you've made it this far. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. As I mentioned before, I did start a Buy Me a Coffee account. If you are interested in helping support, me doing this, I am doing these, I'm doing these because I, one, love them, and two, I like to do all the research, and it helps me to kind of refresh sometimes, and also to help really deepen into some of these concepts that I want to be helping you in. The other thing is, and I'll put a post up about it, but I have a group activation coming up on Friday, a group session, and it's going to be helping to stimulate our vagus nerve to help us calm, and do a nervous system reset to help kind of clear out some of that energy so that we're thinking clearly, we're in digest and rest, and being able to calm our bodies down so that we can continue to receive the good messaging that we need to receive in our daily lives, however that appears to you. So thank you guys so much for listening and watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. I hope you have an amazing week. I'll see you next Tuesday, unless you come to my Friday class. And I again am so appreciative of the support and everything that you guys give me. So I love you guys, and I will see you next week. Bye.